Hey, we got a few people on. So I'm hoping, nice, we got 8 people. Um, Hoping for this to be a little bit more interactive. So, lot of demand coming after Sunday's Bitcoin live stream. As we know, currencies are very much, a product of market dynamics, but I made some references to market dynamics, how I forced myself to learn them when I was working at the hedge fund I was working at, and how very few people actually understand market dynamics, and they're used to screw you over almost all the time, like every single day. And so this is what it's like. And Alex's, some call me autistic brain. I can see all these patterns around, and things like enrage me all the time. And then I have to remind myself, like, only 0.25% of the population can like see what I'm seeing. And so hopefully, with one of these live streams, I can share a little bit about why I think certain ideas are bad that nobody else does, or why I think certain ideas are good that very few other people do. So we'll start off with some basics. And again, for those recently joining, please do leave comments. I will, at least the smart ones, I'll answer those. And I want to make sure that I'm speaking at the right level, not too granular, but not too high level. So I will assume that everybody on the live stream is familiar with the concept of supply and demand. You take this for granted. My dad explained supply and demand to me when I was 7 years old, right? People learn this in Economics 101, but people don't actually they don't take it literally enough. They don't take it as literally as they should, right? The price of almost everything is determined by supply and demand. And you say, yeah, okay, that's obvious. What am I learning here? It's like, okay, let's take a deeper look at how different, let's say, social organizations group together to manipulate supply and demand. Because when you want to know how prices get manipulated in markets, you need to understand how people cheat and how people work together to manipulate market dynamics. So in the Bitcoin live stream, we were talking about dollars and oil and the petrodollar, and that's a great example. So despite the fact that people had traditionally said that we live in a free society, free market society, I think a lot of people don't think that now, but say 10 years ago, a lot of the most important products in our society are actually manipulated in their supply. It's not market dependent. It's actually like central agency dependent, where they just decide how much they want to screw you over, how much, how easy, how cheap they want to make oil, or how cheap they want to make money. And so this is very important, right? Cartels and monopolies are how the big boys make money, right? They teach you in business school, they teach you in economics school that monopolies are illegal, that cartels are illegal, that the government really helped us with the Sherman Antitrust Act. Standard Oil was bad 100 years ago, but like the government fixed it. And Microsoft was bad, but the government broke it up, all that. Well, the reality is almost every company needs to look for a monopoly, because if you do not have a monopoly, you have to compete on price with hundreds, thousands, millions of others, right? And you can't charge a good price, right? So imagine this is what every company is trying to do when they release a product or service, is they're trying to make their product unique. Because if I'm selling a recipe book, right, and it's a delicious recipe book, you see me use it, you see me use this recipe book to lose weight, but there's 100 other people who are working full-time jobs, training, eating delicious food, teaching you how to do it in very simple terms. You might not pay the price that I want to charge. Maybe you would only pay like $1. Like if there was 1 million people like me, like you probably wouldn't even be following me. Like you give me no attention, because there are so many people like that, right? Companies all figure this out with their products and services and working with their marketing agencies. So they always want to have a unique product offering, a unique selling point. Because if what you have is not unique, you can't charge a good price for it. You charge the leverage, which is very important. If you understand most economic relationships, one person has more leverage than the other, typically the buyer, but not always. Unique or better. Yeah, but it's, if it's better, it is unique, right? Because that's under the assumption that there's only one that's better. What if it is better, but there's a million that are better? Well, then it's actually not that important. So, I want to stress the importance of, understanding who has leverage. The person who is unique has leverage, right? Why do you think celebrities can get away with doing just insane stuff that they do and people still want to work with them? It's like, because there's not that many people who can make you, $300,000 in a night, right? Celebrities can make you $300,000 in a night, right? So, imagine Mike Tyson at his craziest. Why would nobody would deal with somebody that crazy if he was like working at McDonald's, dude would get fired. But because, at the time there were like 2 boxers, like 3 professional athletes who could bring in like $100 million on a pay-per-view, he had all the leverage and he could do whatever he wanted, almost whatever he wanted, because he had all the leverage. He was so unique, right? And so when you think about people with like outrageous personalities, people who get away with a lot of things socially, it's frequently because they have some skill. They have some offering that nobody else does, right? So, understand that that's a social application of a market dynamic, of having a unique product offering that allows you to separate yourself from the pack. Now, when you're working at a company, this is very important. When you're working at a company, they want you to not be unique, because very few people realize that when you have a job, you are selling your labor to a purchaser of labor, right? So do never forget this dynamic. You are the seller of labor. There is a buyer of labor, right? All of your colleagues are selling their labor to the same buyer, right? And if you have many people who are your peers, there's 5 people selling the same thing to one buyer, right? So what makes it easier for that buyer to get better pricing is when he has a lot of options. It's like if I'm going to a flea market and I see some a nice leather jacket, right? And there's only one of them. I got to pay what the seller wants me to pay. Otherwise, I have no other option. But if I'm smart enough to get 5 jacket sellers in there, and I'm the only buyer that they're allowed to sell to, that's another thing. If I get 5 jacket sellers in there and make them too busy to sell their jackets to anybody but me, then I can control the pricing, right? And when I can control the pricing, I can drive their productivity up, drive their profits to the ground, and suck everything to me. So this is how Walmart and a lot of large companies use their size as an advantage, because there's very few companies that have the economic power to be like the sole buyer for someone's product, right? Think about how most businesses are, right? You go to Target, there's 1,000 other people at Target and they're selling 1,000 other products. But think about if you're a vendor, if you're a small business owner and you have a chance to land a deal with Target, right? That deal might bring you $10 million in a year. And your profit margins might be like, you might be willing to accept lower profit margins to take that $10 million contract with Target. But then you get into a different business relationship than what you previously had been in. Because if you were in a traditional, business where you have 10 different customers, they're each paying you $100,000, then you go shift. You can no longer serve those 10 different customers that each give you $100,000. So when you're in that dynamic, your revenue is only $1 million a year, but you have so much freedom because there's 10 customers, they're all buying from you. You can kick any one of them off and it only shuts your revenue down by 10%. The ball is in your court. They're coming to you and there's 10 of them. So none of them are singularly important. When you shift your business, to selling to just Target, just Walmart, all of a sudden you service them. Without them, you will not survive, right? Now, all of a sudden, they have leverage over you because they essentially have a market monopoly, but we have a different word for monopoly when it's one buyer, right? One buyer and many sellers is called a monopsonistic market. Very few people understand this term, but this is actually the most important term for you to understand why you're not getting paid as much, and also trying to understand like why businesses fail when they become over-dependent on one supplier, one country. If you want to think about that, anytime you transfer irreplaceable dependency to somebody, you become their slave. Because if you can no longer survive without their production or without what they're giving you, they know that. They know they got leverage on you. You can think about our relationship with China like that. It's like China probably knows like a ton of our stuff, like the devices, things that we're communicating with. It needs to come from them. So that means they have leverage when they come to the negotiating table, right? So the currency that is used in business relationships to supplement actual currency is leverage. The person who has more irreplaceability has more leverage. The person who has limited irreplaceability has limited leverage. And if you think about your job working at a corporation, think about how corporations are structured. There are multiple different departments, one director, VP, whatever you want to call his title, multiple managers under them doing something similar with multiple individual contributors under them doing something similar, certainly for companies that are 1,000 people and higher. And so what do you think they want to do with all of these people under them? They want to make them Legos. And the reason why you can't be rewarded for anything unique that you bring to the table is because they can't pay for unique. They cannot afford to pay for unique. Large corporations can only afford to pay for commodities, for replaceable commodities. That's the only thing that they know how to buy. And they buy it cheap because, if not you, it's the next college grad. Oh, we got 300 college grads willing to work for, $42K. So why are you different? That's exactly what they want, right? So if you find yourself on the selling end of that, where there's 1,000 other people whose resumes look just like yours, understand that even if you get that job, it's gonna be a terrible job because they think they can replace you just like you're a jacket seller, right? You might win that deal selling that jacket to that dude, but if there's 700 other jacket sellers at the flea market, that's probably not a flea market that you want to be in because you can't get good pricing there. And so a lot of people don't realize that, when I worked at Google, and I'm probably their chief economist, I'm guessing, they're like masters at understanding economics. If you really understand how intelligently designed Google.com search page is, their ad product, it's like infinite profitability. This is how you make your products maximally profitable, right? They design the web page to maximize the value of each pixel to bring in the most dollars and the most cents for each pixel. And so this is not the only thing that they apply their economics knowledge to. So when they hire people, when they promote people, what they want to do is they want to limit competition within the company, right? So a lot of companies, you can, if you get a different department to hire you, you can get a promotion like that. But what Google was devilishly smart enough to figure out is that if they didn't allow different units within the company to poach the other employees essentially from other units and offer them higher level positions, they could actually manage wages down better. And so what they do, and they don't tell you exactly why they do it, but they tell you we don't allow diagonal transfers. And the reason they don't want to allow diagonal transfers is the way a corporate promotion process works is they want to slow it down as much as they possibly can, because think about things that you buy. You don't want the price to rise dramatically. And if you can manage the rise of a product that will get more expensive, Imagine, you guys followed the Bitcoin thing. So say you think Bitcoin in 10 years is going to be worth $1 million. Um, and you can buy Bitcoin every month. Um, you would want to lock in a contract if you could to guarantee that Bitcoin wouldn't appreciate by more than a certain amount every year. I have no idea where I was going with that. So in any case, when you're working at your companies, they want to manipulate the negotiation tables with you so that you have limited choices, and they take as much of your time. At least old school companies like white shoe firms, they take so much of your time that you can't develop alternatives to them, right? So think about that. Think about how evil it would be if you were trying to manipulate supply so much, but your sole intention for manipulating supply would be that your counterparty didn't have other options compared to you, right? This is how working at some of these white shoe firms can work. Now, obviously, they build your resume so you have other people proactively seeking you out, right? But from a culture standpoint, at the very least, it's very hard for you to imagine yourself doing something else when you spend all your time servicing one client, right? You have no other life outside of servicing that client. And when a company can deprive you of any alternative but servicing them, you can't even price their relative value in yourself, right? So a lot of negotiations are happening all the time in your life where your counterparty is, especially if there's many of them and it's in a corporate environment, they're trying to figure out how to turn the tables on you to get more leverage. Now, they might not be like sinister people who are, plotting like Dr. Evil to do this, but if you actually just think about what the responsibility of various officers in the company is, it's to do that. Like they're responsible for the shareholder capital. They need to figure out how to get as much leverage out of the capital that they have in their productivity. And so what that basically means is you want to figure out like how you can get the most talented roster, or most capable, I don't even want to say talented, that's the wrong word, most capable roster of people for the most manageable amount of price. And the way that you do this is by turning the tables in a lot of negotiations, depriving people the opportunity to try out for a position that they're qualified for. That's how you manage the market, right? And so if you can manage the entrance of something, then you can manage the price that you need to pay for it, because you've manipulated how that market is structured. And so I think a lot of these observations, they're easier if you were maybe brainwashed the way I was in college to see the world in a libertarian fashion and believe that was like the proper way to have it go, which I probably did, when I was like 22. But the older I get, the more obvious it is that the world never worked like that, because you see so many contradictions to that particular narrative. But you do realize that, especially if you spend time in like merchant heavy centers, like when I worked in Hong Kong, and when you negotiate for things, you understand market dynamics when you're always negotiating things. So people literally don't even need to go to college. Like obviously, if you guys are listening, you went to college, you didn't learn this. People who just grow up hustling, like selling things, right? They inherently understand market dynamics. When I go to a sports game, back when I went to sports games, when I look for tickets to scalp, you know what they always tell me? They always say, "Oh, the game's sold out." The reason they say that is because you're more likely to buy from them. If they can trick you into thinking that there's no other sellers, they got you, right? And so that is shifting the market dynamic. What he's trying to do is tell the market that tell the buyer that there's scarcity in the market. He's trying to shift the buyer's perspective of the market to win his business, right? This happens all the time. So many commercial lies that you see are basically sleight of hands intended to shift the balance of leverage within a market, basically to increase supply of something to manipulate the price down, or to bring on demand to manipulate the price higher. And a lot of businesses are focused on creating some false signals around what a market's going to do, so others can profit off that. That happens a lot in the securities industry in Wall Street. So in any case, we can try to do this again if we think it's sensible. But yeah, thanks to those who joined.